The world has just exhaled, but the air is still thick with tension and uncertainty. Across continents, a cautious sigh of relief ripples through living rooms, offices and crowded streets. For 40 days, fear gripped the globe as the Middle East teetered on the edge of a regional war. The world watched as headlines grew darker and the threat of escalation loomed over millions. Suddenly, the fighting stopped. A temporary ceasefire was announced this morning, April 8, 2026, sending shockwaves of hope and skepticism in equal measure. The United States, Israel and Iran agreed to a 2-week pause, brokered by Pakistan just before a critical deadline. Behind closed doors, exhausted diplomats worked through the night to avert disaster. The Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global energy, is reopening, an immediate sign of de-escalation. For the first time in weeks, shipping lanes are no longer silent. Oil tankers are moving again, but uncertainty and risk remain high. Markets react with cautious optimism, while navies remain on alert. This truce is not a peace treaty. It's a pause, a fragile window for diplomacy to work against the clock, with every hour precious and every word scrutinized. Peace talks are set for Islamabad, but mistrust runs deep. The city braces for high-stakes negotiations that could shape the region's future. Both sides are battered and wary, issuing warnings of dire consequences if talks fail. The world's leaders tread carefully, aware that a single misstep could reignite conflict. The world watches, hoping this ceasefire marks the start of real peace, but fearing it's only a brief interlude before a greater storm. In capitals and homes alike, anxiety lingers. The region, scarred by decades of conflict, stands at a crossroads, its fate uncertain, its people yearning for a lasting calm that has eluded them for generations. This conflict didn't erupt overnight. Its roots stretch back through decades of mistrust, shifting alliances and unresolved grievances. Years of tension and proxy battles set the stage for war. Rival powers armed and funded local militias, fueling a cycle of violence that simmered just below the surface. On February 28, 2026, the US and Israel launched massive strikes deep inside Iran, targeting military and nuclear sites in a coordinated assault that stunned the world. Over 13,000 targets were hit in a bid to cripple Iran's capabilities and force negotiations, leaving cities reeling and infrastructure in ruins. The attack was a high-stakes gamble, transforming a shadow war into open conflict. Military leaders weighed every move, knowing the risks could spiral out of control. The world reacted with shock. Some allies quietly supported the move, but most feared the backlash. Emergency meetings were called as uncertainty gripped global capitals. Iran's response was inevitable. The question was how and when. The nation braced for retaliation, and the streets filled with anger and resolve. The Pandora's box was open, and consequences were about to spill across the region, threatening to reshape the Middle East for years to come. Iran's retaliation was swift and overwhelming. Hundreds of missiles and drones targeted Israel, US bases and Gulf states, expanding the conflict. Iran's proxies joined in, Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq, turning the war into a multi-front crisis. Cyber attacks raged alongside conventional warfare, disrupting infrastructure and communications. Iran's message, any attack on its soil would ignite the entire region. The stakes had just been raised for everyone involved. The Middle East was now fully engulfed in chaos. The Strait of Hormuz became the war's economic epicenter, a narrow waterway suddenly thrust into the global spotlight. This vital passage, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, is the lifeline for much of the world's energy supply. Iran closed the strait, halting a fifth of the world's oil supply and sending shockwaves through global markets. The world watched as tankers were stranded, unable to move, and uncertainty gripped the energy sector. Oil and gas shipments stopped, shipping lanes emptied. The silence on the water was matched by growing anxiety in capitals from Washington to Beijing. Major ports like Dubai's Jebel Ali were paralyzed, disrupting trade and aid. Containers piled up and critical goods failed to reach their destinations, deepening the crisis. Oil prices soared to record highs, fueling inflation and economic pain worldwide. Consumers faced rising costs at the pump, and businesses struggled to cope with skyrocketing expenses. The ceasefire demanded the immediate reopening of the strait, but safe passage now comes at a steep cost. Security concerns have forced shipping companies to rethink their routes and budgets. Iran and Oman are charging millions for each vessel's transit. The new fees add another layer of expense to an already strained global economy. Shipping remains risky, and the world has been reminded how a single choke point can hold the global economy hostage. Naval escorts are now a common sight, but the threat of disruption lingers. The episode exposed the fragility of international supply chains. Even a brief closure sent ripples through industries, highlighting vulnerabilities in how goods and energy move worldwide. The world's economic engine is running again, but the threat lingers, and the lessons of this crisis will shape global trade for years to come. Behind the headlines, the war's human toll is staggering. In Iran, thousands died in the initial strikes, including hundreds of children. Israeli cities faced relentless missile barrages. Dozens of civilians and soldiers were killed. Iraq saw renewed militia violence, and American forces suffered casualties. Lebanon bore the brunt, over 1,500 dead, including many children, as Israeli strikes pounded Hezbollah strongholds. Critical infrastructure, bridges, power grids, hospitals, lies in ruins. Millions now lack clean water, electricity, and medical care. The psychological scars will last for generations. This is the true price of war, shattered lives, and uncertain futures. The war's shockwaves rocked the global economy. Oil prices spiked above $144 a barrel, driving up costs for transportation, food, and manufacturing. Inflation surged, forcing central banks into impossible choices. Stock markets plunged as investors fled to safe havens. The ceasefire brought a rapid reversal. Oil prices fell, markets rallied, but the relief is fragile. The episode revealed how tightly the world's prosperity is tied to Middle East stability. A return to war could trigger a global recession. The world's economic fate now hinges on the success of diplomacy. The stakes have never been higher. The ceasefire is fragile, born of exhaustion, not trust. Both sides remain deeply suspicious. Iran warns its hands remain on the trigger. Rogue attacks have already threatened the truce, highlighting the risk of escalation from decentralized factions. Disputes over the terms, especially Iran's claims about US concessions, fuel public mistrust. US domestic politics add instability, with fierce debate over the deal's legitimacy. Congressional oversight is demanded, limiting the administration's flexibility. The ceasefire holds, but the ground beneath it is unstable. The risk of renewed conflict is ever present. The world waits anxiously for the next move. The ceasefire excludes Lebanon, where Israel and Hezbollah continue to clash. Israeli strikes pound southern Lebanon. Hezbollah threatens to collapse the truce if attacks persist. Iran insists Lebanon and Iran are one front, raising the risk of wider war. Israel faces a dilemma: halt its campaign or risk reigniting the regional conflict. Lebanese civilians are trapped in the crossfire, enduring devastation with no end in sight. The unresolved Lebanon front is the greatest threat to the fragile calm. Peace talks will be haunted by the ongoing violence in Lebanon. As the world adjusts to the sudden silence, uncertainty prevails. Is this a turning point or just a pause before a greater storm? The truce buys time, but both sides are rearming and preparing for what may come next. Peace talks in Islamabad offer hope, but the core issues remain unresolved. Mistrust runs deep, and the violence in Lebanon is a constant reminder of unfinished business. The region's fate and the world's economic stability hangs in the balance. This is a moment for intense diplomacy, not complacency. The storm clouds remain on the horizon. The world can only watch and wait.